Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Wings channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of October 27th through November 2nd. And there is a good amount of stuff going on. All three inner planets are active this week, and Mercury is changing signs going into Sagittarius. But I'm also going to look at a first look at what's going on in the bigger picture for November, too, at the end of the blog. So we'll do the monthly, too, is my point, on the outer planets. And so there'll be a lot to cover this week. So get into it real quick. But just first, the Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube as a YouTube channel now. If you like what you see, please become a follower if you have a YouTube account. And please don't forget to turn the notifications on, because then you'll remember that it's being put up every week. I think a lot of people become followers and they forget to do that little thing, and then they forget about it. And I'm definitely not going to be contacting you directly to remind you. So it's also available on podcasts. It was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel. Just go to your app for podcasts, look up Astrological Winds channel. It should pop up on a number of them. I know Apple iPodcasts has it. Yeah, and that's just an exact audio version of what you're seeing on the video. So it frees you up to be able to listen to the blog when you're doing something else, like driving to work or whatever. I know our time is valuable. And another thing just I had come up, the blog very soon is gonna be starting to be transferred into other languages too by YouTube. So so even people that you may know that don't speak English well, that are interested in astrology, maybe you can pass the link along to someone like that. I know that I know I have an international following, but I think that's just great that the blog's going to go into other languages too. Also, if you have a Instagram account, so does Astrological Winds channel. Become a follower and you'll see it come up in the newsreel. Sometimes I put other stuff up there too, and you can always find it on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. Not only this week's blog, but it has weeks and weeks and weeks of blogs from before that. If you need to go back and check the monthly or the annual blog, so they're all there for you to reference. It also has my menu for all my professional services, since I've been a professional astrologer for now over 20 years. After 7 years of professional training, I really would love to do your chart, or someone who is ready for that. It's a very magical experience. So check my website out for all that stuff. So yeah, let's get into this now, because there's a lot to cover, and I'll give a little more details on that stuff later. Remember, I if you don't know astrology well, don't get stuck on the terms. Listen to the energy so that you can work with it too. That's the important thing, right? And don't forget, please pass the blog along to someone else too. That's my little ask for the pay it forward for putting this out every week for free, basically. And cost me money actually to do it. So this week, all three of the inner planets are active this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Mars will quincunx Chiron and get into a grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn. If you remember, that's what just happened last week with Mercury, right, on the weekend, because Mercury and Mars were conjunct. So Mercury went through that grand trine this weekend, and hopefully you use that really well. I tell you guys, when these grand trines come up, get on it, because they can really, you work with the harmony and the flow instead of resting on your laurels. Well, it can really project you forward a lot and for a long time. And Wednesday and Thursday, Mercury busy again. It's going to trine Neptune and then go into Sagittarius and be opposite Uranus right away, and then sextile Pluto all Wednesday, Thursday. And then next weekend, Venus locks into the cardinal T square with Jupiter and Chiron, just like the sun and the new moon did over the last couple weeks. So that's what I'm going to talk about for the weekly. And then I've got some stuff for the monthly at the end here too. In November, there's some shifts going on too that we should talk about. So first thing, Monday, Mars will quincunx Chiron. And I would say the biggest thing to be careful of on Monday today, if you're watching it on Monday, is to be really careful with your physical energy output. This is the kind of energy where you can strain yourself somehow. You can overtax your strength, or you might reach too far and pull a muscle, hurt your back. So be very, very careful with this energy, because you're going to have a lot of energy with the Mars trine Jupiter on Monday night. There's going to be a lot of energy, and you're going to want to get into doing things and probably something physical. And this is really easy to go one step a little too far and be like, whoops, slip my back or whatever it may be. The other thing too is, something like that, this is a good time to look at your exercise regime, your physical regime. How are you taking care of your body? And if some adjustments are required, it's the time to do that. It's time to, maybe release some bad habits that you might have, or, cut down on certain things that you're taking maybe too much in, or exerting, or not getting enough exercise. So it's a good time to really think about that. And then the grand trine kicks in. It's a water grand trine. Um, Mars is in Scorpio, and then we've got Saturn in Pisces, and Jupiter loving itself in Cancer. And so this is a really, really, really sweet energy, because, as I said last week, Jupiter and Saturn are kind of opposition energies. Jupiter brings growth and expansion, Saturn brings restriction and structure. When they work together in a harmonious aspect, in particular, they can really take the bigger vision, the bigger plan, and bring the details into it to form some kind of solid structure around it. So that's what we can do with our actions this week. Whatever we're feeling really motivated by, we can tap into a lot of physical energy this week, but it's not imbalanced. It's coming out in a very harmonious way. It's very smooth. It's working really well. So if there is any project right now that you're really interested in personally, that has you really fired up, or if you're in the middle in your career or work, in some kind of project, this is excellent energy to like put into this. We have great foresight, great planning ability. So this is really a good time where we can really be effective with our actions, because we have that foresight, we have that planning ability, and we can really push forward ahead on the things we want. And then the obviously, this is really good for business. Like, I would tell you guys, this week is just an excellent week for business. If you want to push that, it's very clear decision making, and you can move forward successfully. And it keeps us with an optimistic viewpoint too, but it's not out of balance. Saturn helps it keep real. And what does Saturn do to add to this equation is it gives us the patience, it gives us the diligence, it gives us the endurance to go and do the hard work that we need to do in order to make these bigger plans and visions work. And that means getting down to the details of the plans. It's not like, just have the plan, Mercury, Jupiter. Now Saturn comes in and is like, roll the sleeves up. Let's get it going. Let's move this forward. So it brings a lot of discipline. It brings a lot of the energy of just plugging away, doing what we have to do to make it work. And you know what the great thing about grand trines is too, if you use the energy, because you have to use it, you will suddenly find out that you may have talents that you didn't even know about, or that the skills that you've developed in the areas you've been working in have like really reached an expertise level. So like this is really, can be really eye opening for us. It can really, have us like, wow, really learn more about ourselves and our own capabilities. Like, wow, like I didn't even realize I had the ability to not only do this, but to do it really well. So I can't stress enough to you guys that this week, how useful this energy is this week to like literally physically get into the projects that we're doing. and that we can be very, very effective in our work, and we can blend the grander vision and the details and hard work all together, and it can just flow so well if we use this energy. So go out and use it. Then Wednesday and Thursday, Mercury. I mean, this is an interesting journey with Mercury. We got two positive aspects: the trine to Neptune and the sextile to Pluto, and then it's in an opposition with its higher octave, Uranus, right? So that's not so bad, but it goes into Sagittarius, which feeds the curiosity of the Mercury mind, but it's in detriment there because it can a lot of times overlook details. So, very interesting energy going up here with Mercury, because really, when you look at this overall, what all this is saying is our minds are going to get very fired up with some new ideas this week, too. It's going to broaden our horizons, and we're going to want to bring in change. And that's going to start with the Mercury trine Neptune on Wednesday, where we really can get into a very imaginative framework of mind. We can get very inspired. We can see the vision. We can see the ideal. We can see our dream. And we also are very sensitive with our words and thoughts. So we react to people really well. We're very open. We're very compassionate. We're very sympathetic. Plus, this actually gives a very natural interest in mystical and spiritual subject matter. So, like, that helps feed the vision. And it's also just a great time to study that stuff. Also, a great day to be, poetic or artistic with our words, in whatever way that would come out, even if it's a speech or something like that. Then later in the day on Wednesday is when Mercury changes signs. It goes into Sagittarius, and traditionally this is one of the signs that Mercury is weak in. It's called its detriment, and that mainly has to do with because the mind is so filled up with big ideas that it can easily overlook the details. And so then later on, we have to circle back and take care of the details because they start to trip us up. And we realize, oh, yeah, I was like so high from the idea at the time that I forgot to, cross all the T's and dot all the I's, so to speak. So, but I mean, it does give a very curious mind. Mercury, Gemini, and Sagittarius are that knowledge axis, and Mercury is ruling on one side and detriment on the other side. So Mercury is very much associated with that, and so it does. That's if there is like one thing that's in common, it's curiosity. There, it wants to learn more. It wants to take on when it's in Sag, it wants to learn more about subject matters that it already has a primary educational basis on, and it wants to expand its basic understanding. Mercury and Sag can help us see the big picture, these patterns that are underlying things, and get it and give us a better understanding of it. One of the things to be careful of too with Mercury and Sagittarius, another reason why it's in detriment there, is it's the planet of communication, and we can kind of get really self-righteous and arrogant at times with our communication. We're very honest. With Sagittarius, fire signs can be very honest to the point of recklessness, right? You guys know that little phrase, or honest to the point of being tactless, in particular when Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius can easily hurt other people's feelings because they don't enter them into the equation. So like tact is not something we're really good at. We're so driven to find our truth that we really don't care what the impact of what we're saying is on other people. So it's easy to hurt other people feelings without even realizing it. But this is really like, a time when we're really seeking out new ideas and concepts. And I will say this too, because we're in such a world like this. Mercury and Sag can get people on their preacher soapbox. And so we're going to probably hear a lot of that going on. And Mercury is going to actually retrograde next week in Sag, and then it will go back into Scorpio eventually. And I'll talk about this in the monthly, and then go back into Sag in December. So a lot of the next 2 months, unfortunately, I think we're going to get a lot of blowhard type stuff from our public officials, from our authorities, people like that, who think that, they're right and everybody else is wrong, which is like really kind of the problem of the whole world today. And as soon as it goes into Sag, it's going to oppose Uranus. So Uranus and Mercury are like two octaves of the mind, of the intellect. The Mercury is the lower octave, the intellectual mind, the logical mind, whereas Uranus is the higher part of the mind, the intuitive mind, the flashes of insight that we get. And so when Mercury is opposite Neptune, the mind can get worked up into a nervous frenzy because the amount of stimulating ideas coming through, especially through other people in an opposition, can literally just jam your mind up. And it can be really difficult to slow it down. It can be very difficult to discipline it. So it's going to feed right into the Sagittarius energy of overlooking details that can mess you up later. This can get us very, very scattered, this energy, very, very undisciplined, but also it's because we're very stimulated by the insights and ideas we're having. They can be literally incredibly ingenious. So the question when Mercury is opposite Uranus is trying to discern which ones have some value, which ones really are ingenious, and which ones are just way too far off the handle that they'll ever actually stick in reality, and so therefore need to be discarded. But it's definitely a time where we want to do something new. We want to be exposed to something new. We want to learn something new. And there can be a lot of impatience too. There can be a lot of mistakes that are made because we're jumping to conclusions. But once again, we're very honest with our words, very, very honest with our words, but we don't realize they can be really, they can actually scatter people out. They're coming like really quick. They can be sloppy. The whole approach can be sloppy. So the cool thing about all that is the last aspect that Mercury is going to make is the sextile of Pluto, which will give us the ability to filter through all this inspiring ideas, cutting edge ideas, tons of insights into them, and what ones are really valuable. That's what Mercury sextile Pluto will help us do at the end of all this. It will help us take a magnifying glass out and really look at the details. Like, okay, wow, okay, really, I've got to do this. So, and it gives us the right attitude about it. So, if there are mistakes that are being made up here, or if the ideas are too far out, this Mercury Pluto is like, yeah, this one, this one's not going to work, and it has the right attitude about it. We just, we don't need to get involved with that one then, basically. So it's like really great at correcting any of the mistakes. We can use our mind to get to a much, much deeper level, get to the bottom of anything that we're researching, anything that we're looking at. And this can also show that once we understand the package, we are really effective communicators in getting it out. Like what we feel we found out is very significant to us. So we want that out. We feel like we found the truth. And so what we learn this week is going to have a really deep impact on our mind. And I really think, as long as we understand we're going to get sloppy with some of our thinking and visions, and that we're going to have to go back and maybe correct some mistakes or have the right attitude about correcting those mistakes. Once again, just like the Mars, this is really positive energy to use this week, you guys. In fact, the two of them obviously can combine together, right? The ideas that you have in your mind can be driving what's motivating you in the grand trine what you're taking action with the Mars. Now, next weekend, Venus is also going to get involved in life, and it's gonna in our lives, and then it's gonna hit that Jupiter Chiron square that I've been talking about for the last month, that the new moon hit in a T square last week and the sun had hit the week before. So this week, and Venus is going to hit the T square there. Venus in Libra is going to hit that T square there, and this one does not have to be very difficult. Okay, Venus in Libra is really strong, and connecting to Jupiter even in a square is a very optimistic, happy, friendly type of aspect. They're the two benefic planets, and they're both in signs they love to be in: Venus in Libra, Jupiter in Cancer. So, like, it does not have to be that hard. With the right attitude, this can actually be a very beneficial T square, this one, because basically, it shows that we have a lot of lessons to learn through relationships. So with the right attitude of like looking at these people in relationships as your teacher, we can learn a lot. We can have a very open mind. So this is a great weekend to hang out with people that you trust, people that you love, people that you enjoy to be with. You can have a lot of fun together. One of the things to be careful of is overspending money and resources on things you don't necessarily need. Also, it shows that yes, there can be some tension in certain personal relationships, but this is a great weekend to talk that stuff out. People are in a positive mood. They're in a more receptive frame of mind, and can be more tolerant of each other's viewpoints. And even if we don't completely agree with them, we can then kind of agree, okay, that's the way you see it. This is the way I see it. I think we can still, work, on this, or be friends, or, not make it come into something that's very painful, that we can build some structure around that. So definitely an opportunity to build some forms around relationships with that. Now, let's get into the month of November here real quick. And remember, I only focus on what the outer planets are doing on the monthly scale. So, I've got 5 things going on. November 7th, which is next week, Uranus, which is retrograde, is going to slide back into Taurus. Okay. And I think that's until April 29th. Yes, until April 29th of next year, it'll be in Taurus. November 9th, Mercury is going to go retrograde, and I will talk about that in detail next week. And November 11th, Jupiter goes retrograde. Okay. And then November 13th, the second exact hit of Uranus sextile Neptune. And then right at the end of the month, November 27th, Saturn will go direct. So, first off, Uranus on November 7th, sliding back into Taurus. Now, remember, I read that quote from the IMF last week, right? About how they're saying the next, half a year or so, it looks like a very unstable economy, resources, everything. Well, that's really been our last 7 years, right? Like I said last week, the last 7 years, if there's one thing that's been true about finances and economy, it's been unstable, which is exactly what I said 7 years ago in the blog, that Uranus was going to give us a 7 year period of very up and down, unreliable finances, resources, assets, markets, things like that. So, basically, we're going to see it again for these next 7 or 8 months until April 29th. We are going to see a very unstable economy again, a very unreliable economy, and resources may be hard to come by. A lot of the decisions that have been made in the past year, or the hens are going to come home to roost on those decisions during this, and it may cause a lot of chaos in the economic market. And it doesn't matter whether people want to pretend that that's not happening or not. We know on the streets that that's what's really happening with people. So I don't think the economy is going to be very reliable. This is a time where it's a great time period to reassess what you think you really need. One of the things that Uranus and Taurus did was made people realize they don't need as much stuff too, that they can live a simpler existence, and that actually frees themselves. Uranus likes freedom, frees themselves of their things, not so much to take care of, not so much to always be concerned about. So this is another great time to reassess that while Uranus is retrograde. Do I need all this stuff? Or has it become a burden? Is it taking away my freedom and my ability to be myself? But stability in finances is going to be very difficult for almost anyone these next few months, unless you happen to be one of the people that's part of the, multi-millionaire billionaire club. November 9th, Mercury goes retrograde for the third time this year in a fire sign at 7 degrees Sagittarius. It will slide back into Scorpio on the 20th and turn direct at 21 degrees of Scorpio on November 28th. So Thanksgiving holiday is going to be Mercury retrograde, you guys. So anybody who's traveling, good luck. Okay, good luck. That's all I can say to you. It will go back into Sagittarius on December 12th. And I will get into a lot more detail of this Mercury retrograde next week. That is one of the main things of the week next week. So then November 11th, Jupiter goes retrograde 2 days after Mercury at 25 degrees of Cancer. It will turn direct at 15 degrees of Cancer on March 12th. So it's going to stay in Cancer the whole time, which is great. As I've said before, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. And I do think, once again, this combined with the Uranus going back into Taurus shows the economy is going to be really tough during this whole time period. During this winter and spring, it's going to be a tough economy. And I think, it's going to start to affect the real estate market too. I don't know if it just will be there's no money available for loans, or if the stuff is overpriced. It'd be anything like that. But I think the real estate's going to get sucked into it too. And on a societal level, this can make us feel kind of insecure emotionally, like where we're feeling like society is failing us, like it's not protecting us, it's not protecting our loved ones, it's not protecting our community. So a lot of us may like kind of circle our wagons around ourselves and our loved ones and communities and try to like even out that energy when it doesn't feel like it's being taken care of. It also shows in Jupiter in Cancer, we may try to retreat into some past ways of doing things to try to find some security in these changing times. And this can also be a time where, once again, taking care of others can actually be very difficult for us, like it maybe straining our resources, and things like that. So be a very interesting period. And like I said, it's going to go through March 12th. On the 13th is the second exact hit of Uranus sextiling Neptune, which we're in the middle of right now. We should have a good idea of what it's bringing us. But it definitely is one of those ones, I've said it when it happens, it definitely stimulates people to look for answers, to try to figure out what's going on in their life. And so therefore, it naturally opens the mind up to wanting to have new levels of experience, trying to go to new places in its consciousness. And a lot of times that can be brought in by different people, different experiences, other cultures, things like that. And it makes us then want to connect with people who have similar insights to us, like be in a group. So, and ultimately on a personal level, what that does is it starts to change or transform some of our own personal goals. Like I said, you guys should have a good idea about how that's affecting you on a personal level at this point, because we're in the middle of that. And then on November 27th, Saturn goes direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. And then it will go back into Aries for good, or for at least the next 2+ years, on February 14th. So it's going to go through these last critical degrees of Pisces one more time after it goes direct. And that's, again, what are we going to do? Can we find a way of blending our ideals into reality? Once again, this does show that certain people have figured out that they want to eliminate some of their material needs and desires and make their life simpler, easier, that some of their abstract desires are more important than their physical ones at this time. But it definitely is one of these ones where we're trying to bring structure to our beliefs, but it also shows us where there can be weaknesses in them. So we'll get a last few months of Saturn going through Pisces to try to get that stuff straightened out. before it goes back into Aries next year, and when Neptune does too. And I told you guys, even, when this year started, just think we're in for a really tough 2 or 3 years with the two of them in Aries together, and even the whole period of Neptune going to Aries really indicates a lot of dissension, warlike energy, wars over ideals. So, not going to be an easy thing. But yeah, so that's what I have for November. And like I said, this week, you guys, I really just love the way the three inner planets that we can work with all this energy. There's the grand trine and the useful Mercury energy, and even the T square with Venus and Jupiter can bring in a lot of positive energy into relationships. So use that energy well. Now, next week, we do have a full moon. It's at 14 degrees of Taurus. So I'll be talking about that. Mars is going to go into Sagittarius too and join Mercury there. And then also Venus is going to go into Scorpio next week. And then on the longer term things, remember, this is also going to be the week where Uranus backtracks into Taurus, which I won't go over again. I'll need to focus on those changes of signs for Mars and Venus in that full moon next week. So that's what I'll have then. Okay, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I need you to pass the link along right now to somebody else, even if you've done it before. Please do it again. If you'd like to give a monetary or currency donation, no amount is too small. Like even $5 helps out with the blog. My Cash App is $Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. Venmo is at Matthew, and then there's a hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten. The best way to support me is when you need a reading done by a professional, and believe me, it is not the same as getting a computer printout. It is not the same as you opening a book and trying to figure it out. It is not the same as going to a friend who has dabbled before. You get a full holistic package. This is your life. You never leave your chart. So it is a worthy investment to have. And if it's around your birthday, I highly recommend every year getting a predictive report. It's like getting this report for you personally for the year. And yes, those transits affect you majorly and can give you a lot of the answers about why you're going through things. I also do fixed star readings for deeper soul purpose, children's readings, so parents can learn to relate to their kids better, relationship readings. If you're in a relationship, you want more elections, if you're looking for the right timing for something, horary charts, if you're needing the answer to a question. If you're a beginner student, I have podcasts, beginner classes. I'm looking for to do a live class. If people are interested in that, I need at least 4 people. If you're a group, on the website, I also do lectures, workshops, mini readings, classes, things like that. They can even be done on Zoom, right? So, like, if you're looking for something like that, contact me. Go to the website, www.astrologicalwinds.com, or you can contact me at matthe823@gmail.com. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you all next week. We'll look at that full moon. We'll look at Mars going into Sag and Venus going into Scorpio. Hope you all have a great week. Don't forget to use this energy. Use it, guys. Use it.